She thought she was building a $98,000 barndominium. Then the bills started arriving. By the time the walls were up, that $98,000 dream had turned into $211,000. And the shocking part, the money didn't disappear into luxury finishes or expensive furniture. It went into the things nobody notices in the final house: the land, septic, well, permits, site work, and change orders. So is $100,000 or less barndominium actually possible in 2026? Yes, but only if you understand what you can afford to build, what you have to sacrifice, and which costs can destroy your budget before construction even begins. Tonight, we're stripping away the pretty renderings and looking at the real micro-budget barndominium. What $100,000 can actually buy, where builders get caught off guard, and how to keep a small budget from becoming a $200,000 mistake. If you want barndominium ideas with the real numbers behind them, subscribe to Barndo Dreams. Now, let's find out what $100,000 can actually build. There's a number that keeps appearing in barndominium videos: $100,000. It sounds simple. Build a small shell, finish the inside, move in, and somehow stay under six figures. But there's a problem. That number can mean two completely different things. Search for barndominium under $100,000, and you'll find plenty of beautiful houses claiming to have made it happen. But look closer at the numbers, and you often discover that the $100,000 price tag was never actually the price of the house. It was the price of the shell. And a shell isn't a home. A typical barndominium kit in 2026 might cost roughly $20 to $35 per square foot for materials, such as the steel frame, siding, and roofing. That sounds incredible, until you realize what's missing. No finished floor, no insulation, no plumbing, no electrical system, no HVAC, no kitchen, no bathroom, no finished interior. Just a weather-tight box waiting for someone to spend a lot more money on it. And that's where the $100,000 dream starts falling apart. A finished, move-in ready barndominium can land around $65 to $160 per square foot, depending heavily on location, finishes, labor, and how much work the owner handles themselves. So the real question isn't, can you build a barndominium for $100,000? The better question is, what does a $100,000 barndominium actually have to look like? Because once you remove the fantasy from the equation, the answer gets surprisingly interesting. Now let's reverse the math. If you're working with roughly $100,000 and you're targeting the lower end of a realistic finish build range, you're probably looking at something around 800 to 1,000 square feet. And that immediately changes the picture. Forget the massive great room. Forget the oversized garage. Forget the 4-bedroom floor plan with a giant kitchen, luxury bathroom, and dramatic exposed beam ceiling. A realistic $100,000 Barndo is much more likely to be a compact 1-bedroom or tightly planned 2-bedroom home with 1 bathroom. And here's where things get interesting. At this budget, every square foot has to earn its place. A loft bedroom can eliminate the need for an entire 2nd bedroom footprint. 1 bathroom instead of 2 can dramatically simplify plumbing. And removing the garage or a massive workshop can save thousands because you're not just eliminating walls. You're eliminating additional slab, roofing, framing, and structural requirements. Even a famous steel exterior isn't necessarily the problem. Steel siding and roofing can actually help keep the shell affordable. The real battle happens after the shell is standing. Because the steel package might represent only a fraction of the final cost, while insulation, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, drywall, flooring, cabinets, fixtures, and labor quietly consume the rest. So here's the uncomfortable truth. A $100,000 barndominium isn't a smaller version of a $300,000 Barndo. It's a completely different design philosophy. It's smaller, it's simpler, it's more deliberate. And if you want that 6-figure budget to survive all the way to move-in day, you can't design it like $1 million house and simply hope the numbers cooperate. Here is the number that actually derails most micro-budget Barndo plans, and it has nothing to do with the house. Every square foot figure you've heard tonight describes the structure alone. It assumes the land is already cleared, already has road access, already has power at the property line. Most rural lots people buy for Barndo builds have none of that. A septic system, required almost everywhere outside a municipal sewer line, commonly runs somewhere in the 5 figures depending on soil type and local percolation testing. A private well is another five-figure line. Running electrical service from the road to a rural building site can add thousands more before a single stud goes up. Land clearing and grading, driveway installation, a survey, all of it sits outside the per square foot number, and all of it comes due before the framing crew ever shows up. This is the trap that ate the Oklahoma build. Her structure budget was close to accurate. What she hadn't priced was the ground underneath it. Permits and site development alone can add $15,000 to $45,000 depending on the county, and that's before anything resembling a foundation is poured. There's a second, quieter version of this trap: financing. Construction lenders generally want to see a completed, appraisable structure before they'll release funds. That means kit-only, shell-first builders often have to self-fund the shell phase out of pocket, then hope an appraisal supports a loan for the finish-out. Banks don't lend well against a bare steel box. If the $100,000 number was supposed to include a loan, and the loan requires a nearly finished house to qualify, the sequencing itself becomes a problem the budget spreadsheet never shows. A $100,000 Barndo is achievable. A $100,000 Barndo on raw, unserved rural land almost never is. Not because the house got more expensive, but because the land was never free in the first place. Assume the land is already served: power, a well or municipal water, a septic system already in, a driveway already cut. That's the scenario where $100,000 stretches furthest, and where sweat equity does the most work. Flooring, painting, cabinet installation, and trim carpentry are the finished categories most owner-builders can legally and safely do themselves. And they're exactly the categories inside that 75% finish-out cost. Skilled local contractor labor alone runs roughly $85 to $95 per square foot in 2026. Doing even a third of the finished work yourself can claw back a meaningful chunk of a $100,000 budget. One category where cutting corners backfires specifically in a metal building: insulation. Standard fiberglass bats are the cheapest option on paper, but metal buildings are prone to interior condensation. Moisture trapped behind cheap insulation in a steel skin structure becomes an expensive, hidden problem. Rust, mold, degraded framing, long after the ribbon cutting. It's one of the few places where the cheap material choice tends to cost more over the life of the house than the expensive one does up front. It is worth protecting, even on a tight budget. Roofline and footprint complexity is the other lever. A simple rectangular plan with a single roof pitch keeps framing labor and material waste down. Every jog in the exterior wall, every roof valley, adds cut lumber, added flashing, and added labor hours that don't show up as a single line item, but compound across every trade that follows. For a micro-budget build, the plainest possible shape isn't a stylistic compromise. It's a direct cost control. Choosing a pre-engineered kit over a fully custom design also matters here. Stock Barndo plans run roughly $1,000 to $2,000, against $4,000 to $6,000 or more for a custom design set. On a $100,000 total, that difference alone is meaningful, enough to cover a good chunk of a bathroom's plumbing rough-in. So, is a $100,000 barndominium real, or is a number built for a thumbnail? Both, depending on which house you're picturing. It's real if the picture is a compact, 800 to 1,000 square foot home on land that already has power, water, and access. Built with a simple rectangular footprint, a stock floor plan, spray foam insulation protected as a non-negotiable line item, and a meaningful share of the finished labor done by the owner. It's a fantasy if the picture is the 2,000 square foot open concept dream with a 40-foot shop bay sitting on raw acreage with no utilities. Because that project was never a $100,000 project. It was always a $200,000 project wearing a smaller number in the headline. The lesson underneath all of it isn't really about barndominiums. It's about which 25% of a build looks impressive in a photo, and which 75% quietly decides whether the family living there stays on budget or ends up like that Oklahoma build. $100,000 deep in dreams, and $211,000 deep in reality. If this kind of honest cost breakdown is useful, there's a lot more of it coming on this channel. Subscribing means you won't miss the next one, because there's a design choice sitting underneath almost every plan in this video that we haven't questioned yet: the simple rectangle. It saved money here. It's the reason micro-budget builds default to it every time. But that same shape is quietly falling out of favor with Barndo designers in 2026. And the reasons why have nothing to do with cost at all. That's next.